anything and everything about your investments. We're just a touch away. Monday to Friday at 12:30 p.m. only on Bloomberg Quint.
Good morning. You're watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint Live. Today is Friday the 13th. Hope you have a great weekend planned, but before you get started on it, here are the big headlines this morning. First up, Asian markets start Friday on a positive note, buoyed by Trump's speech hinting that trade tensions are easing. US President Donald Trump softens his stance on a possible trade war, says renegotiations are on with China and members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a three-way race for Fortis after a Hero Enterprise, a Berman family combine, puts in an unsolicited binding bid for the hospital chain. And the RBI and government locked horns over the banking regulator's new stressed assets rules, as the finance ministry feels that it might have unintended consequences. Let's start with the international markets first, and stocks rose on Wall Street after President Donald Trump said he's considering rejoining the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that he pulled out of shortly after taking office. He added that China is negotiating with the US and the two may not actually impose higher tariffs. Also, expectations that lower US taxes would fuel corporate earnings added to an easing of nerves over US military conflict with Russia in Syria. Trump met with his national security team on Thursday to discuss a US response to the alleged chemical weapons attack in Syria, even as UK Prime Minister Theresa May's cabinet said that it was vital to respond to the incident. There was an early expectation of a more imminent military response. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle sums up the Wall Street action in this report.
Stocks rallied in Thursday's Wall Street session. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq all climbed by 0.8% or more. In fact, it was the Dow that outperformed the other two major averages, climbing by 1.2%. All of this as trade tensions continue to ease. Now, behind some of the Dow's outperformance, the sector composition. The top sectors for the Dow included the financials, along with the industrials and the materials sectors, all up more than 2%. The top stock for the Dow, though, Intel, climbing on the day, a tech stock rebounding from a small decline the day before. Turning to the S&P 500, a top stock there, Insight, the biotech company, higher on a positive investment bank commentary. We also had Micron trading higher, another chip maker, and also noticeably higher MGM Resorts and Wynn Resorts. This after the Wall Street Journal reported that the two companies may do some sort of a deal around Wynn Resorts' Boston property. But the standout market on the day, at least from a bullish perspective, Bitcoin. Bitcoin climbed more than 10% at the highs, up 17%. It's not clear what's behind that rally for Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency space, but it certainly did help some of the related stocks, including Overstock.com and Kodak. Overall, when we put together some of that bullish activity, especially for stocks, together with the pullback in both haven bonds and the Japanese yen, Thursday's Wall Street session was risk on. In New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
Well, trade tensions between the US and China have been keeping investors across the board on edge, but comments by Trump and Xi pointed to a dialing down of the rhetoric, and markets took that as a positive sign. But Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz is of the view that China does not believe that appeasing Trump will work. Listen in.
There's an old saying in China about in any conflict, know your enemy and study him carefully. And they've been thinking exactly about that. So that is one of the reasons they've taken a measured response, not escalating, but very measured. At the same time, they realize that Trump is what you might call a schoolyard bully. And when you have a bully, appeasement doesn't work. So what they're doing are things that they believe are in their own economic development interest. So they believe opening up their financial markets at this stage is in their interest. Wasn't in their interest 15 years ago. I don't think the United States government has any deep understanding of China, and that's really quite sad. I don't think they have anybody who's been engaged with China, not China bashing. I mean, they have somebody who's engaged in China bashing.
You're referring to Peter Navarro.
Exactly, but somebody who's really been engaged in talking to China over the 30, 40 years of its development process and seeing how they've been evolving both economically and politically.
Well, Joseph Stiglitz there, very interestingly quoting from The Art of War. Let's take a look at the Asian markets on that note. And the Asian markets have opened positive, taking cues from the Wall Street session. The Nikkei in Japan is leading gains, up over 1%, and the Chinese benchmarks have also opened positive. With that, let's turn to the Indian market, and Darshan Mehta and Agam Vakil are here to set you up for the day's trade and also to tell you what's happening in the futures and options space. Darshan, first to you, earnings on everyone's mind.
Yeah, that's right, because Infosys will come out with numbers, but they will come out with numbers after market hours today. So probably the impact will be felt only on Monday. But nevertheless, Asia is doing well. The SGX Nifty is indicating a positive outlook of 36 points. But still, we have 2 hours to go, so that can change. But as of now, it seems like it will be a decent start for our markets. Now, what happened as far as the ADRs are concerned? Majority of them did manage to move. Yesterday, IT did extremely well in India, and that's why Infosys was up 4% on the US markets. ICICI Bank managed to rally, and Wipro among the IT pack did manage to come in 0.6% higher. What was not doing well was Vedanta. It was down almost 2.6%. Yesterday, big sell-off as far as some of the base metals are concerned on the LME. Dr. Reddy's, HDFC Bank and Tata Motors continue to trade weak. Now, what happened for crude? Crude for the past 2 trading session has been rather range-bound. It's coming in close to the $72 barrel per mark on the Brent side, and WTI is coming in close to the $61 barrel per mark. But there was a big sell-off apart from aluminium on the LME, because aluminium continues its good run because of shortages that are there. So aluminium was up over 3%, but look at the sell-off that happened in copper was down 2%, zinc was down 5%, nickel was down 1%, lead was down 3%, and tin was down 0.5%. And you can see the same trend. Now, if you're looking at what's happening in China currently, aluminium continues to soar up almost 2%. Steel has managed to hold on, but zinc and copper are seeing selling pressure even in China. So it's become very, very selective among the base metals also. Now, as far as precious metals are concerned, they continue the good run. Gold and silver, both of them are trading much higher in today's trade. Now, as far as fund flows are concerned, FIs were net buyers to the tune of almost 370 crores. DI sold in almost 600 crores in the cash market yesterday. Which were the sectors in focus yesterday? The Nifty Bank managed to move up, but the mid cap and small caps saw selling pressure that came into the market. The other sectors in focus, metal and real estate, were the ones that fell in 1.5 to 2% in trade yesterday. Wix was down 1% given the fact that the market was a little volatile in yesterday's session, and overall the Nifty was up 41 points, mainly led by the IT pack. So Infosys, TCS and HCL Tech among the big gainers. ITC and Vedanta were the ones that actually were down in trade. But Agam, what are the FNOQs indicating?
Well, Darshan, Infosys along with the other IT companies will remain in focus, because we will get an indication of how a lot of these IT companies have performed with Infosys coming into the picture. But that said, when it comes to the Nifty, I've seen a little bit of an increase when it comes to open interest, and of course this is towards the longs. The same for the Nifty Bank futures as well. We are looking at some more accumulation in open interest. When it comes to the India Volatility Index, again the VIX has remained largely around the same levels at around 14.5. Put call ratio again hasn't changed too much at around 1.52, but with respect to changes in open interest across different option strikes, we're looking at more and more accumulation for the second straight day in the 10,300 and the 10,400 puts. We have another entrant in the FNO ban. IRB Infra moves in, expected restricted trade there, as well as something like a TCS where we've seen more longs building in. So as I mentioned, IT stocks will be in focus, and of course we have NIT Technologies also from the IT pack, which has seen a lot of fresh longs coming in. So plenty of stocks to watch out for, but today's day of trade will have focus on Infosys and how they come out with their quarterly results.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Agam. And Agam will be back just a short while from now to tell you more about those Infosys results. But before we do that, let's take a check on the rupee and the bond market. Saloni Dhanuka is here with all the updates there. Morning, Saloni.
Good morning, Alex. So the rupee yesterday rebounded from its 5-month low and ended little changed at 65.26 levels against the dollar. Now remember, the domestic currency did turn volatile during the day, and 65.45 mark against the dollar. Intraday, its lowest level since November 14. Elsewhere, improving economic data like growing industrial production as well as easing inflation is likely to support rupee in today's trade. Well, speaking of the bond market, sovereign bonds gained in trade yesterday after declining for last 3 consecutive sessions as yields on the new 10-year benchmark security dropped nearly 7 basis points to 7.47%. In terms of flows into debt market, global funds increased their rupee debt holdings in the tune of 200 crore according to NSDL data. Now this is of course after withdrawing for last 3 sessions. Now on the global front, dollar index did gain in trade yesterday. It ended 0.2% higher against majority of the currencies, while euro slipped after European Central Bank policy makers hinted that they will soon end their massive bond buying program. And elsewhere, talking about pound, it was the biggest gainer in trade yesterday, and it continued its rally for the 5th consecutive session, and it is now trading near 2-week high against the greenback. And lastly, speaking of dollar rupee, now it is trading at 65.20 levels against the dollar in the non-deliverable forward market, which indicates a flat to positive opening for Indian rupee in today's trade, Alex.
Thanks, Saloni. Now, to the big macroeconomic data that Saloni just briefly talked about, India's retail inflation moderated further in March as prices of vegetables fell further with the incoming fresh supply. CPI came in at 4.28%. However, the growth in factory output slowed to 7.1% in February, primarily due to a decline in mining activity. The latest updates notwithstanding, Axis Bank Chief Economist Saugata Bhattacharya sees some more risks to the upside as far as inflation trajectory is concerned. Here's what he said.
The good part about core, so some part is commodities prices, the metals prices that we were talking about, but a large part of that is still relatively moderate because the house rent allowance component of the core inflation that we had been worried about, that the Reserve Bank had been worried about coming in from the states, that doesn't seem to have come in. So, which is very good news, because if the states were beginning to implement their own 7th pay commission driven house rent allowance increases, that would have probably have increased the core component even further. So that's good news, that from now on, if that component still happens with some states coming in, that will probably be diffused, and it's not likely to be that much of a concern. So we are pretty much on track on the Reserve Bank's forecast for H1 and H2, probably even a little bit lower, but the risks are on the upside.
All right, before we move forward, let's take a quick check on the commodities market. Jayesh Kilnani has all the details there. Jayesh, over to you. Morning.
Morning, Alex. Let me start off with the base metal space, which has, once again seen some traction. So the base metal index, in fact, snapped its 3-day winning streak and ended lower. And now all metals except for aluminium declined overnight. And in fact, aluminium surged 3% and is now headed for the best week in over 3 decades now. And now what has happened because of the sanctions imposed is that the aluminium inventory has shot up as traders are now looking to offload their inventory. As far as other base metals are concerned, we had zinc, which actually fell to a 4-month low, and it was down nearly 5% in trade, and lead was down about 3% in trade. With the other base metals like copper and nickel, those declined as much as 1% each. Now, shifting focus to the precious metal space, we have seen some pressure come about for gold prices. So gold actually posted its biggest loss in over 2 weeks as the trade war concerns actually eased out. But oil prices that actually closed at a 3-year low on the back of Middle East risk and the OPEC compliance, which has actually reached a record high of about 5 months. Now, OPEC also said that its output has fallen to the lowest level in a year now. So, if you look at the Asian hours, oil prices are trading absolutely soft.
Thanks, Jayesh, for that. Now, a lot's riding on the Infosys earnings that will come out later today. The tech giant will set the mood, essentially, for the fourth quarter earnings season. But it's also the first quarter under the new CEO, Salil Parekh. Agam Vakil, like I told you, is back to tell you all that you should expect from the company this quarter. Agam, over to you.
Well, thanks for that. This quarter is not going to be as much about the numbers as much it is going to be about the outlook. But starting off with what we can expect with respect to Infosys, at least as far as the dollar revenues are concerned, we can expect an uptick of around 1.9%. And, well, income, again, looking at a little bit of a decline. But moving in, we're also expecting about a 2.5% uptick in EBIT and EBIT margins standing at around 24.4%. Similarly, we could expect a big decline in profits, but that is essentially on account of a reversion of tax in the base quarter, because of which optically it may look like a very weak quarter. That said, among the biggest factors that we're keeping an eye on is, of course, the guidance, because as per the Bloomberg poll, we are looking at a guidance of anywhere between 5% to 8.5%, and it will be around 200 basis point range. With respect to margins, again, we're expecting about 23 to 25%. And other than that, the next most important thing will be, of course, Salil Parekh and his plans to take Infosys forward and how he is charting the course for the company. And finally, of course, we'll also be keeping an eye on the several verticals and outlook. So we are expecting a positive commentary on BFSI, perhaps subdued commentary on something like retail and the manufacturing sectors. So these are some of the areas and factors that we are watching out for as far as Infosys is concerned. All eyes will be on the outlook, not as much on the earnings.
Thanks so much for that, Akam. Now, let's move on to the big story from last evening. It's a three-way race for Fortis Healthcare. Hero Enterprises and the Berman family combined have also put in a bid for the hospital chain. This comes at a time when Manipal Health and IHH Health are also keen on acquiring the company. The combine is already a shareholder in Fortis, and their stated position is to bail out the company from its current debt problems. Darshan Mehta is here to tell you all about it. Darshan, over to you.
Yeah, so basically, if you're looking at what happened overnight, the only difference and the big difference is that, it's more of a fund infusion rather than takeover of the company, the bid that happened. So yesterday, Hero Enterprises, that is the family that owns Hero MotoCorp, and the Berman family, which owns the Dabur company, they have put in an unsolicited binding offer for the company, and they have proposed to invest 1,250 crores via a preferential allotment, and this is a two-part allotment that they have done. Now, firstly, part A is that 500 crores will be invested immediately, and after 3 weeks of due diligence, they plan to put in another 750 crores, and the pricing that they see will be 156 per share, or whichever SEBI formula throws up, or whichever is higher. So 156 is the base that Hero, the investors, are talking about at this point of time. So this is the breakup of what will happen. Now, the history is currently they own 3% stake in Fortis as a combined entity. Twice or thrice they've managed to speak to the management in terms of upping their stake, infusing money, but every time they've resulted in failure. So this is another offer that they have given. Apart from it, why have they bid it? Basically, they are a shareholder and they have their concerns. So as a shareholder, they have bid, and they've said that there is need for external funding that is immediately required because of the cash crunch that is there, and that is why they have bid for it. Now, if they go ahead and bid this 1,250 crores on a market cap of almost 8,500 or 8,000 crores on Fortis Healthcare, the deal will make them the largest shareholders in the company ahead of Yes Bank. So currently there are no promoters. It's basically a lot of PE guys and a lot of banks that own stake in the company. Now, what they have to offer, they're saying that the 500 crores that they will pay upfront, that the company will give him, there will be no question asked, and that will be basically to repay the immediate debts that they have, anything that the creditors want, and the employees' dues that are there. So these are the only three things this 500 crores can be used at, and in return they are asking for one board seat. Why are they proposing? They said that put our proposal in front of the shareholders, given the fact that the background is extremely strong of both both the promoters. And finally, they're saying that there is no structural need that is there in the company, because for Manipal there'll be a merger. We don't know what will happen with IHH, but at this point of time, it's a quick resolution. The immediate 500 crore infusion that will be get, that is something that they will be able to use. And long-term growth structure for the company, they believe, is extremely sound with the fund infusion coming in at that point of time. So that's the bid that's coming in. Just a quick comparison of what has been bid. So Manipal Health has initially given a much lower quote. The new quote states they are bid at 156 per share. As per Bloomberg, IHH has bid at 160 per share, and the Hero Burman combined is at 156 per share, or whichever is higher as per the SEBI formula. So pretty much equal bids. So the Hero Burman combined can go in much higher. But remember, the difference is this is takeover of a company and this is upping stake in the company. So that's the big difference that you need to watch out for in this race for Fortis Healthcare.
Thanks so much for that, Darshan. Now, clearly, that is going to be a stock to watch out for in trade today. But let's move on now. The RBI's new stressed asset rules have the government worried. Finance Ministry officials say that the tighter norms may have unintended consequences on the entire system and are said to be backing the lenders who have already sought some relaxation. Dekunjori sums up all the developments in this report.
The government is not in favor of the new NPA resolution norms that the RBI has come out with, and fears that this would have unintended consequences. The specific reason that the government has pointed out here, with the with the norm that asks government to ask banks to initiate the resolution plan within 1 day if a corporate borrower fails to pay his dues. The government fears that this would lead to banks stopping credit to a particular borrower, even if he is temporarily stressed. Another concern pointed out by the government is that there is no specific process that banks need to follow when they have to complete the entire resolution process in 180 days. Since the RBI norms also say that there won't be any JLF, since the RBI's guideline come into play, there won't be any JLF, and that's a concern that the government has also raised, which is in line with what the bankers had informed parliamentary panel last week in Delhi, and have also suggested, and the IBA has also suggested similar set of recommendations to the central bank. Another specific concern that the government has raised here is that such a resolution process would clog the entire NCLT process and would delay the entire resolution process.
Now, Swedish defense manufacturer Saab has joined the likes of Boeing and Lockheed Martin in a race to secure the world's biggest combat aircraft order right here in India. The government has announced a tender for 110 combat aircraft that mandates building at least 85% of the order locally. Sajit Mangat, who's at the Defence Expo at the moment, caught up with Jan Widerstrom of Saab and started by asking him about the company's game plan for the Indian market.
The process has started and we just received it, so we are in the middle of analyzing and reading and really looking forward to respond to the Indian Air Force.
You will be partnering with an Indian partner, Adani, in this, right?
Yes, as we said before here, we are looking at building a partnership with Adani, but of course we also need to look at the overall requirements and how the SP process is evolving. So currently we are looking forward to the process, and we will monitor how that is going along.
You're part of the last MMRCA project as well, where you bid as well. How do you see this process being different from the last one?
Again, it's just an RFI, so we don't know that. So, but of course we've read the Chapter 7 of the DDP and the SP and so on. So if we assume that they're going to go ahead with the SP process, it's going to be a different process, because the MMRCA was different. That was more of a buy global with the directed TOT to DPSU being HL. And but again, the RFI doesn't clearly give us all those answers. So we are looking forward to the next step and looking forward to the progress of defining exactly what the end process will be.
Well, we had the Prime Minister today talking about this project as well, saying that we wouldn't be taking 10 years like the previous government took. It would be a shorter process of shortlisting and taking forward. Are you optimistic with the kind of progress that you're seeing on the RFI front, and then the feedback which you're getting from your counterparts or the ministry officials?
Yes, I mean, I'm very well aware of, we are aware of the fact that there's a strong need from the Indian Air Force. They need numbers, they need fighters in the air, and I think we can provide the best solution. With the superior availability and technology that we are offering with the Gripen E, the Air Force will definitely have fighters in the air where they belong. And I'm encouraged by the Honourable Prime Minister's statement saying that he's going to go ahead and they're going to push now for the procurement of the 110 fighters. So yes, I would say I'm really encouraged by that statement.
Let's head straight to the stocks in news with Shraddha Babla. Shraddha has an entire list to tell you about this morning. Shraddha, morning.
Good morning, Alex. Starting off with earnings that came after market hours yesterday. You have Reliance Industrial Infra, weak set of numbers coming. Revenues are down about 1%, EBITDA down 16%, and EBITDA margins also taking a knock of about 300 or nearly 300 basis points. That apart, you also have HCL Technologies, which has partnered with Sumeru Equity to acquire US-based cloud services company Actian. Now, this is going to be an all-cash deal of $330 million, and HCL will own about 80% in the joint venture and Sumeru Equity about 20% in the JV, which will be set up to make this acquisition. There's also some updates that ThyssenKrupp has shared with respect to its planned JV with Tata Steel, where they have said that the decision on the JV will be taken in the first half of this year, and also that due diligence has almost been completed. That apart, you have Boeing, which has signed a partnership with Hindustan Aeronautics and Mahindra Defence Systems. They will be jointly manufacturing fighter jets in India. You also have Premier Explosives, which will be in focus. That is on account of its decision to tie up with French defense company Nexter. Together, they will be manufacturing BMCS charges. So this is in response to the tender for 10-year contract for manufacturing BMCS in India. So watch out for Premier Explosives. Texmaco Rail has also said that they've opened a subsidiary now in South Africa to grow exports and EPC business in that region. And again, two other stocks in the back of bulk deals, starting off with Quality, where Letco Bruzo Emerging Markets Fund has bought another 1.5% stake in a bulk deal yesterday. This is, of course, in addition to the 1.7% stake that they had bought on Wednesday. So they were up their stake. And MMP Industries, now Kenneth Andrade's Old Bridge Capital Management has bought 2.14 lakh shares at an average price of 192. So those are some of the stocks to watch.
Well, that's all we have for you on this edition of A Daybreak. All you need to know is up next, so do stay tuned. This is Bloomberg Quint.